It's easy when you look back, you can judge, and I know he'll be on, so you can ask them this specifically, but I think I'm going to bring it up to kind of the conversation that it needs to have, which is, the mayor represents every resident of Ottawa, and when there is an area that is impacted, you want to work closely with the mayor and legal team and so on, so that everyone's on board with the actions, right? So I bring you back to that period. I'm the only counselor basically at City Hall. I can't work from home. I'm at City Hall. I'm in my office. That entire building is empty. Like, it's empty. So, there's the factor where counselors live, where the mayor lives, where city staff live. They're seeing it on their screen. They're seeing it on social media. They're not living it. So I'm not casting a blame. I'm describing the period, right? There's a period of time where people are behind their screen at home. We're living the impacts in real time, and it happens extremely quick. And then, there's the other piece, which is the period, like the crisis. At the city, again, I go back, I'm young but getting old. 12 years later, we've had a lot of crisis. Flooding, power outages, a recent derecho, the sinkhole on Rideau. It's pretty standard what you see at the city. There's a table, a white table with name tags, a water bottle. You'll have communication, you'll have the service lead, that'd be through the COVID, it was public health. Through other crisis, it might have been Hydro Ottawa, it might have been a city official, the mayor, and maybe other jurisdiction. I didn't see that white table during this situation, ever. And I out of all the crises I've seen, it's a bit unique that I didn't see that. And I've never asked, he's never explained it, but that to me is like, as someone who's lived the crisis at the City of Ottawa, is atypical of not seeing that confident, we have a plan, informing residents. It came through, but it came through police chief, through police communication, and some city information, which was often criticized because of street closures and the tone that was used in city communications and police communications in the first few weeks.
Thank you. I want to take you now, just to close, to OTT 30058. And it's a video, Councillor McKenney, that you filmed. And I believe we talked a little bit about this day that it was filmed, but I'll ask you to confirm it. We're just going to stop it at 150 because I think there was some maybe audio issues at the very end of the video. So we'll stop it at 150, but we can go ahead and show it.
Anyways, Councillor. So Councillor McKenney?
Yeah, they are next, Mayor.
Thank you. I am out here on the street, as you can see, where people live.
We're never fucking leaving.
Yeah, hi there. Where people live. And here we are Wednesday, in the evening. We couldn't even have this meeting early in the day. I have not heard from anyone, whether it's the city, whether it's police, anyone. What is the plan to protect the people who live downtown, who are under siege, who continue to be under siege? And there is, I don't know who is, hi bud, I don't know who is counting trucks. I can tell you that the street is not cleared. Our residential area is not cleared. The smell of diesel fumes right now is actually sickening. And I want to know, and I want to know specifically, and I'm going to ask the city later on, what is the plan for this weekend? What is the plan so that we don't get thousands of people back on our streets, adding to this mayhem and chaos? What are we doing? How are you stopping people from coming in on the weekend to add to what is already here?
Thank you. So can you confirm, Councillor McKenney, that this was filmed on the day of the council meeting on February 16?
Yes, it was.
And you say in the video, I don't know who is counting trucks, but I can tell you that the street is not cleared. What was that in reference to?
So this was a council meeting after the mayor had made some arrangement with one of the convoy organizers to remove trucks from the residential area. That did not happen. And this council meeting was Wednesday. I was very, very concerned, more than concerned. I was really quite frightened that another weekend would bring, just so much more chaos. We just could not go through another weekend. And I was very concerned that, that the mayor was relaying to council and to the public that that trucks had been relocated off of residential streets. I decided, probably an hour before council that I had to do something, and I went down to Kent Street, and I called in council from there to demonstrate that these trucks were still here. I needed people to see what was happening. It was very difficult because you would hear from people. I would get emails. I got exceptional amount of hate throughout the whole 3.5 weeks, but it was getting worse. Personal threats to myself, my family, and there was so much. People were dismissing what was happening. Not everyone, of course. I got tremendous support from across the city. People emailing me, they saw what was happening and they supported that. But I just did not feel that police, city had a plan for the weekend. It was Wednesday night. We just couldn't. Friday was the day that it all began again. So it was really a plea and a demonstration to everyone watching what was happening to people who live here on Kent Street. You can see the residential towers on Kent Street. People, that's their front lawn. That's where they live.
And Councillor McKenny, did anyone give you any kind of assurances or comfort about the plan for that weekend after this video?
Yes. After this video, I began to hear more regularly from the interim police chief that there was a plan in place. I got more specific information, not detailed, and I wasn't looking for detailed information, but that there was a plan in place to bring in the resources to end the occupation over the weekend.
And this was Interim Chief Steve Bell?
Yes, it was.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fleury, Councillor McKenny spoke about receiving threats to herself and to her family. Did you similarly receive threats? I believe we saw a bit of that in your witness statement, but maybe you can just explain that.
After the first weekend, and when we saw no movement, us speaking to locals, I was one of the first ones to say stop the funding, block the funding, and I went on social media and said that. And
sorry, this is funding to the convoy?
That's right.
Okay.
And hours after, there were 2 pickup trucks that I have a young family came to my home and just yelled absurdities with typical pickup truck with the flags on. And at that point, I knew, okay, this is out of control. I had to shut down my own social media and I had to move my family out for the duration.
And was this reported to the police?
I did report it to the council liaison at the time, and we're walking 2 responsibilities. I'm responsible for my family's safety and well-being. I'm in a crisis at work, so gotta protect the family. I think Catherine did the same with their child, and for us, then it was back on the ground, back in terms of what could we do. So. We didn't ask for it. We didn't want police protection. We wanted police on the ground to clear out the streets and protect our community. But the stuff we had on social media, the threats, my wife is Chinese Canadian. I have a mixed kid. What a beautiful country we're in. And here I am being threatened this virus comes from China. This guy's linked to China. Are we real? I'm a local city councillor trying to help my community. I recognize I'm in the capital. Leave us alone.
And in closing, is there anything that either of you would like to add that we haven't covered about your experiences with impacts on residents and businesses, the city response, the police response, or any other matter relating to the convoy in Ottawa? I'll give you a chance to think about it. Have we covered it from your perspective?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you both. Those are my questions. Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you. We're going to have to take a break at some point because I think among other things, the interpreters need some breaks too. I know you all are pretty strong and want to go through, and I love the punishment, but I think they need a break. Now, the question is, we can start briefly with the coalition or break now. I don't know.
Je peux parler en français si vous voulez. On peut donner une pause aux interpréteurs.
I could speak French if you like, and we can give a break to the interpreters. Yes, but we have sign language interpreters as well. Ah, okay. Sorry about that then.
I had thought we'd do it about 5 o'clock, if that's okay, and you could get started. And unless there's a different order, I take it, I'm no longer asking whether it's agreed order. So if there is, let me know, but I'm assuming there isn't. So is it okay to get started with the Ottawa Coalition and
The only thing I would say, Commissioner, I think we're allotted 30 minutes. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it would be, just because of the timing, I'm not sure if you're suggesting you want us to start and then break partway through our
I'd
exam.
say
Like,
we
my
do-
preference would be to do all of ours at once.
we do your 30 minutes at once, and then it'd be at 5:10 the break. But because I think we're going to go late, so I'm trying to break it at a good spot. Is that okay? Or do you want to break now?
It'd be my preference not to do my full 30 right at this moment. But,
Okay,
but
well then
in
let's
your
take
hands,
a
Commissioner.
15-minute break. Let's try and keep it to 15 minutes, please. 15 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
15 minutes, please. Thank you to the interpreters.
The commission is in recess for 15 minutes. La commission est levée pour 15 minutes.
Est-ce qu'on nous amène dans une salle pour manger?
Order à l'ordre. The commission is reconvened. La commission reprend.
Okay, we're into the last stretch.
I'm just gonna set my time watch, my stopwatch, Commissioner, make sure I'm on time or under time. Thank you, councillors, so much for joining us today. I'm just gonna go through.
If you could just introduce yourself
I
for
apologize.
the record
I apologize.
and for the witnesses.
Thank you, Commissioner. Paul Champ, legal counsel for the Ottawa Coalition for Residents and Businesses, representing community associations and business improvement areas in downtown Ottawa. Councillor Fleury, I'm going to take you through a few emails. I'd ask the hearing clerk to call them up. The first one is Ottawa 2779. And while that's being brought up, I just want to ask you, Councillor Fleury, get the sense from your testimony, did you feel that the occupation of downtown Ottawa wasn't getting the attention it deserved from the Mayor of Ottawa?
That's a tough question. Probably not as early.
From your perspective.
Yeah, probably not as serious as early as it should have been. But when it was clear, I didn't feel resistance. I can put it that way.
Did the mayor reach out to you personally at any time to ask you how things were going with you? We've heard about his awful threats to your family or anything like that. Did he reach out to you?
Checking in throughout the weeks, I'd say it took a while though, and I was communicating with different members of his team throughout. So him maybe less so, but through his office in different instances for sure.
Well, but was there any the personal concern, the human touch, anything like that in between yourself and the mayor during that time, that difficult time?
Yeah, I mean, you have to go back to the period. A lot of these were either through text or through Teams or Zoom meetings, right? So you turn on the Zoom, you turn off the Zoom. There's not that sidebar conversation. There'd be a few texts throughout during that 3 weeks, but nothing that would nothing that comes to mind, I'd say. Okay.
We've got an email here that's Ottawa 2779. This is an email from February the 2nd from yourself to the mayor, a number of other people there, Serge Alpan, that's his chief of staff, is my understanding, and Steve Canalakos, his city manager, Kim Ayotte, and Councillor McKenney. This is you that you sent that email at that time?
Yes.
Expressing the concern for your constituents?
Correct.
And now at the end, so you laid out a lot of the issues there. In the end, you ask him, please consider the following, 4 points that you're hoping to consider. Did you get a response to this email?
I did not.
Okay. Can I ask to get document Ottawa 3893? Great. So this is just a series of emails. If we go to page 2, near the bottom, we see that you're getting an email here, Councillor Fleury, a bit lower. Lower. There we go. Yeah. So you were getting an email from a Mr. Brian Ohoski. Who is that?
He's the general manager of the Rideau Centre.
Okay. And he's reaching out to you. Hi, Mathieu. So you interact with him fairly frequently?
Yes. Yes, it's an important property. He's also the chair of the board of the downtown Rideau BI.
Right. And so he's asking you, is it safe or unsafe to open and operate the Rideau Centre? Is there a way to leverage support of OPP or RCMP? Our accountability is to our paying tenants. For 5.5 days, we've been able to meet that requirement. Then we see an email from you just a bit further up, rolling up this time. Yep, thank you. To hi, Steve, Mathieu, Kim, and Chief Slowly. Please below see 2 clear questions from Rideau Centre. Can City and OPS clearly respond? And why did you send this to, that's Steve Canalakos, City Manager, I gather. Kim Ayotte, that's head of bylaw and emergency services, Chief Slowly. And who's Mathieu Gravel?
In the mayor's, he's a mayor's staff.
Mayor staff, okay. Okay. And then if you will just keep rolling up, we'll see the response that you get. I forwarded your request to the Councillor Liaison Office. That's Kim Ayotte. That's the head of emergency operations. Is that right?
Correct.
And he says, we need to follow a process as we are getting hammered. Did you know what Mr. Ayotte meant by that?
No. We both our offices were getting tons of emails, but the way the way I was connecting into the city was tactical here. As you can see, we have a largest commercial property asking very clear, direct questions, which would influence their ability to open or not.
Yeah. And then you respond, McKenny and I are both most impacted. I am not flooding your mailbox. Rideau Centre is not just any business. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I interpret that as the communications with Mr. Ayotte is starting to get a little tense. Is that how it was from your perspective, Councillor Fleury?
Yeah, I'm used to the environment where if you go to the top and you're funneled through a liaison or someone that it's of lesser importance, or else the management would take action and respond. I thought the email from Brian was very clear and deserved a clear response one way or the other. Two simple questions, not long, pretty obvious they'd been closed. I mean, Kim would have known that information.
Hearing clerk, could we get Ottawa 5511? Oh yeah, thank you. And the next page, sorry. Rolling down a bit further. There we go. So here's an email from Geneviève Dumas from Fairmont. Who is that?
She's the general manager at the Chateau Laurier.
Okay. And to Steve Ball, who's Mr. Ball?
Mr. Ball is the executive director of the Hotel Association here in Ottawa.
Right. Here we see Ms. Dumas talking about a sprinkler failure that started a fire alarm and flood in her elevators, and then raises the concern that the fire truck couldn't make it to the hotel. This would be the same case for ambulance. So all hotel in this radius is most likely in the same situation. Could be a major issue in case of real emergencies. This is the situation you were telling us about before, is that right?
Correct.
And then at page 1, we see, so rolling up, you see a picture there of it, but rolling up. And you said, hi, Chief, see below, what can we do? These seem to be extremely dangerous life safety and emergency response challenges. Not sure why OPS wouldn't have accessed Chateau Laurier via St. Patrick and Mackenzie Avenue. Did you ever get a substantive response to that?
No.
Counselor? Thank you. Hearing clerk, Ottawa 8282. Thank you very much. And I'll take you on this one to the third page, if I could, hearing clerk. Roll. Keep going. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. There we go. So this is an email from Mr. Brian Olhowski again from the Rideau Centre to yourself and Andrew Peck. That's with the Downtown Rideau BIA on February 15th. And here, Mr. Olhowski is setting out that issue. He's setting out a number of issues, problems with the Rideau-Sussex intersection. But then he says, on a side note, Lamoureux Pumping had parked a red pickup truck in my underground parking with a diesel fuel supply tank in the back, and protesters were going back and forth filling portable gas cans and carrying them out to the demonstration. And then the last sentence, he says, that truck is still in my parking lot and I was not supported by bylaw. It's been over 24 hours. That's the incident you were telling us about before, Councillor Fleury?
Yeah, correct. This is a 911 call that went unresponded to.
That you got an email from the council liaison saying, hello, Councillor Fleury, and then a few other things. It just says, the tow was booked for this evening. However, the vehicle left the parking lot beforehand. We'll continue to monitor the situation. And your response to that is, if we roll up. That's great right there. Oop, no, down a bit. There. Thanks for the support, Matt. Obviously, I'm glad the truck is gone, but this does raise some major concerns for us. Between the three groups, OPS, bylaw, and regulatory services, still couldn't manage to tow a single pedestrian vehicle that was engaged in illegal activity from a private lot in a 36-hour window. So that was your understanding, it was there for 36 hours?
Yes, and not removed by authorities.
Thank God no one was injured there. You then, oh, pardon me, that's actually from Mr. Ohoski. That's not you. That's Mr. Ohoski. That's the Rideau Center saying that.
Correct.
You then forward that on to Mr. Ayat. See below from the Rideau Center. What should I answer him? I think he raises a fair point. And Mr. Ayat then writes this longish sort of email to you, and you respond. If we just go up a bit, roll up. So there's the long from Mr. Ayat, and then just roll up just a little bit more there. Great. And you just in a one-word sentence in response to that says, I don't believe this to be satisfactory. Why weren't you happy with that email, or why did you find it to be unsatisfactory?
It's not the type of relationship I'm accustomed to between an important stakeholder and the City of Ottawa.
And then Mr. Ayat responds, this is the answer, and I'll leave it up to you to decide if you want to send it. So is that continue to be a little bit of the tone of your communications with your own manager of emergency operations?
Yes.
Ottawa 7352. Great, and just roll down a little bit. Perfect. So this is an email that you received from Mr. Ohoski again on February 15th about raising concerns about the Rideau. Sorry, that was the one we just had. Sorry about that. I apologize, but just up a bit. Hi, Diane and Deputy Chief Bell. So you decided after those exchanges with Mr. Ayat, you wanted to forward it on to Ms. Deans, the chair of the Police Services Board, and Deputy Chief Bell. Why did you send it on to them?
I'm not known to give up on things that I think are incorrect. I mean, I felt that the response not only was inadequate for the seriousness of the situation, but also raised a number of other risk factors that that could go unanswered. For time, Council, there's a couple other documents I was going to put to you, but I'm not going to do that, about some concerns about schools, that there was some concerns that schools were raising about convoy, or it seems to be convoy-associated trucks. Can you just tell us what you knew about that? So I am Francophone, and the Francophone, both the Francophone boards did connect with me. There are schools in both of our areas, and they were wondering what was police recommending, if they should operate or not. They had issues for their staff to get to work. Parents were raising concerns. And there were a number of incidents where their parking lot was used by pickup with flags in the context of the school, and there had been on social media a number of threats of go attack the school, go around the schools, and that sort of drove a lot of the concerns from the school boards, and we heard it separately from parents on the same issues, and Ottawa Police liaison team did connect with them in this case. They were in the 2-3 schools that I can think about that were most concerned. OPS liaison did meet with the principal, and I don't know what ensued of that, but the rare communication I got back and forth with police in that specific instances, they did take it seriously.
Councillor McKenney, on that issue, on schools in your ward, were you hearing concerns about that from those schools or parents with children in those schools?
Yes, from Centennial, which is close to...
It's about 6 blocks from here.
It's about 6 blocks from here, yes. And also Devonshire, which is not in the ward I represent. It's just on the, just to the west, a block or two. But after Hat King had encouraged, people, his supporters to go around schools, I heard from several parents that was actually happening in and around Devonshire, and I brought that to the attention of Chief Slowly.
And Pat King, that's one of the organizers that we'll be hearing from later in the inquiry. If I could get document Ottawa 30002. Now, councillors, while waiting for this document, I'll ask you both about like the diesel fumes and so forth that was happening downtown. I'll just ask you first, Councillor Fleury. Were you hearing anything from city staff about any concerns about air quality or the health impacts of diesel fumes in downtown Ottawa from these 400-odd trucks that were idling all the time?
No, we were worried. I think that is one of the aspects around noise and fumes where council was pretty supportive of our request, saying what are the strategy, what are the risks, and media and experts in that world sort of were speaking publicly to that matter, but we saw few actions to other than the injunction to actually resolve that.
And Councillor McKenney, same for you. Were you hearing from city staff about issues around air quality because of the diesel fumes in downtown Ottawa?
No, I never heard from city staff on that issue.
And what about, were you hearing from residents about what they were experiencing?
Oh, absolutely. The smell of diesel fumes on Kent Street and in that, in the center of the occupation was actually, it made you feel ill after you were there about half an hour, an hour. So I heard from residents daily about their concerns.
So this document that I've pulled up, it's an email that you guys did not get, but we see some of the people in on the twos and the froms. A Kelly Cochran, a Todd Piper, Tricia Karen was with the Ottawa Police, Eustace Roberts with the police, Michelle Ferguson with the Ottawa. Do you know some of those people? Are familiar with any of those officials or police officers?
I'm not.
I'm familiar with one of the
public health?
Public health
Yeah,
names, but not
Mr. Ferguson, I believe.
Yeah.
So this is an email that was sent, disclosed by the City of Ottawa, sent on February the 18th, subject message from Ottawa Public Health regarding convoy-related air quality concerns. And the author writes, "Good morning, sharing with you messaging that OPH, Ottawa Public Health, developed and requested that we share with our colleagues who are working or traveling in the PZ." I'm not sure if you know if is that a city acronym or something like that, the PZ?
I'd never heard it before I saw this.
Okay. And here's a long email. You've had a chance to see this email now. We were sharing with that you. There's concerns here about the air quality and about the health impacts from Health Canada, as noted, as well as Ottawa Public Health. Had that information been shared with you at the time?
No.
No.
About the protests have become entrenched and become an ongoing occupation. The potential risk of exposure to diesel exhaust, as well documented health concerns, has increased for those in the impacted areas. As a result, we'd like to bring this to your attention, ask you share this with any agency conducting health and safety risk assessments during the event. So that wasn't brought to your attention?
Nope.
Thank you. Councillor McKenney, can I get a document Ottawa OTT 3640?
That's a problem.
While we're waiting for that, I'd just like to ask you, Councillor Fleury, you told us a bit about the personal impact to you, and it was after you had gone on social media talking about fundraising, is that right?
Yeah, I was saying the only way we're going to see an end to this is to stop the funding.
Right. And who were you trying to communicate to when you put that message out on social media?
I'm a local city councillor who represents the residents in my community and businesses and within our city. So hard to control that within social media. I hear you, but my communication is to my residents and businesses.
And you were referring to the millions of dollars that was being raised on GoFundMe to support and keep the protesters here in Ottawa. Was that right?
Correct.
And you were looking for some solutions. Maybe the city could do something to stop the flow of that money to those individuals?
Correct.
And then how far did that social media go that you heard about?
Yeah, I mean, we had to shut down the platforms. And as I said, there were a few hours later, people showed up at my house. It was, again, I'm a local city councillor finding myself on Fox News, I guess would describe the situation.
We have this document up, Councillor McKenney. It's an email from a Jessica Bradley. Who is that?
Jessica is the assistant to Diane Deans.
And this is an email on February the 4th, 2022. Subject, walk through Centertown, and it's addressed to Catherine, Sean, and Jeff. Those are two other city councillors. Saying, I'm writing this morning to strongly encourage you not to move forward with your planned walk through Centertown today. Just for our time, not to go through the whole thing, but what was the message you were getting from Councillor Dean's office as the representative from the Ottawa Police Services Board?
Yes, I believe this came from Councillor Deans through Jessica Bradley's email, but we were organizing walks. This would have been the first one that we were organizing, and Councillor Deans did have, certainly concerns, serious concerns that it would cause resources to be redirected from other areas that police were focused on. And, she also called me to explain that, she understood why I was doing why I felt I needed to do what I was doing, but that she was afraid that it would encourage further violence.
Councillor Fleury, there's one other question I was going to ask you about the bylaw, and both of you a little bit. The way you were kind of describing it, outside the red zone, there was some enforcement of bylaw that you were observing, but it seemed to be selective.
Correct.
A bit of selective enforcement, that it seemed trucks associated with the convoy weren't getting tickets, but residents in Ottawa were getting tickets.
I described it the other way, but your assumptions aligns with what I've been describing. Correct.
I'd like to get document Ottawa 29762. Now, councillors, I want to ask you about one big event that occurred partway through, and that was the removal of the chair of the Ottawa Police Services Board and another member of the Police Services Board by motion, and then which led to then a few others resigning. That event, as you may recall, there was an Ottawa City Council meeting on February 16th, 2022. We've got the in-camera minutes now for that. You participated in that debate that day?
I did.
Yes.
Councillors, this was a motion brought by one of your colleagues, Councillor Moffat, to remove Councillor Deans from the Police Services Board. Is that right, Councillor Fleury?
Correct.
And Councillor McKenney, you participated in that debate that day?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Just for a point of time, we've seen some of the comments that you've made through here, both of you, but I do have one or a couple of questions for each of you. If I could go to page 4. And down near the bottom. Yeah, that's perfect. You'll see there, Councillor McKenney noted that, save for a few councillors that had reached out to them and offered help, other members had done nothing. They indicated they had not received any calls from the city manager or the general manager of emergency protective services. The councillor noted that Councillor Deans and me had reached out. Councillor McKenney expressed opposition to the motion to remove members from the Ottawa Police Board, arguing it was a power grab. Can you tell us? Oh, I apologize. It goes over to the next page. Sorry. I just
Scroll down.
Scroll down to the next page. I apologize.
Thank you.
Clerk. Can you tell us what was the point that you were making there, Councillor McKenney? What was your concern about the removal of the chair of the Ottawa Police Services Board in the middle of this crisis in the city?
Well, this was February 16th. This was the day that I called into council from Kent Street, and then I rushed home on LRT to get back in time for in camera. I had to be in a secure space, so I had just gotten back to my home. The notion that Councillor Deans would be removed as chair of the Police Services Board in what was the middle of a crisis in our city. We had a police chief who had resigned. We needed action. We needed stability. I was terrified of going into another weekend where, the actions of harassment and intimidation were just increasing every weekend. And I felt very strongly that the mayor and some members of council, but certainly the mayor, was using this to take away any influence that Councillor Deans had vis-a-vis the Police Services Board, and I referred to it as a power grab.
Do you recall how much notice did you have about this motion and what its objective or purpose was?
Not
We didn't know
in
about it.
that afternoon, I figured it was coming. I had been in contact with Councillor Deans. I was trying to do everything I could to get resolution to what was happening. So I did have, there was some indication that, that there was something happening. I wasn't brought into those conversations, of course, but when the motion dropped, it had never been communicated to me anyway.
And this had been, sorry, Councillor.
I just think, we see it maybe a bit differently for different reasons, but you have to consider the day.
Yeah.
We have a council meeting that's booked early afternoon with a police services board in the morning. That police services board pushes this into the evening. When they get out of that police services board, we're informed that the chief is no longer the chief.
Right.
And then we walk into council, and then everything we're learning about this. We go in camera, and then you could read through it. It's like, oh, DC Bell will execute, but we have someone else aligned. There's a chaos within a chaos, right? So my perception is, in bizarre way, to Councillor McKenney's point, we need stability at this point. We need to dismantle this. We need the operations, right? And there's a number of things that led to the Slowly situation. But I just think just taking these minutes without the context,
right,
maybe misses some of the nuances.
For sure. And so just the context was that the chief had resigned, Chief Slowly had resigned, and then the board had reached an agreement with another retired chief from another police services and wanted him to come in just on an interim or short-term basis to lead the police service. And some people were concerned, well, why don't we just have the Deputy Chief Bell remain as interim chief? That was the sort of, that was the context?
Correct.
And your view is, why bring in someone else, just have Deputy Chief Bell stay in charge?
My view is this new hire is not coming in fast enough.
Right.
DC Bell's in place. We need dismantling. People have been asking us for 3 weeks.
Can you recall what Councillor Dean said about why she didn't want to leave Deputy Chief Bell in charge as chief? Or that she had any concerns with his leadership at that time?
I don't remember.
Or Councillor McKenney?
No, none that she expressed to me.
And you had asked Councillor Fleury about, well, what was the board going to do if the former chief had not resigned? Do you recall that?
Correct.
And do you recall what Councillor Dean said to you?
I think it's well scripted in that piece that you'd share these documents. It was apparently a mutual agreement to resignation.
But, or you were asking, well, what were, if Slowly didn't resign, if Chief Slowly didn't resign, what were you going to do? Or did you have concerns? She said something like, well, we did have concerns, he didn't have a plan.
Correct. I'm asking that in the spirit of what was happening with Slowly, where initially he said, this is not a police matter, there's a political fix. Then he said, well, we need additional resources. Then all of us, under the pressure of the residents and community, was saying, what's your plan? And then all of that tangled over the days, the hours, and eventually this resignation.
Could I get document OTT 8026? Now, this is an email that we're bringing up, Councillor McKenney, that you sent on February 17th to Interim Chief Bell at this point. And you say there is a significant police action this morning. Should residents in Centertown be sheltering in place? Should they evacuate today? What are we doing to keep kids in school safe? Has anything been communicated to people affected by the movement against this occupation? And then we'll see there's an exchange up there that you weren't in on between Robin Guest and Sir John Bennett. Is a good question. Did you get an answer to your good question?
I did get an answer from the interim police chief, Steve Bell.
Can you recall what he said to you?
My recollection is that he said there was no need to shelter in place or for any evacuation, and that he would keep me updated as the operations moved along.
Could I get document OTT 25001? I'm hoping I got that right. I recognize I'm just about out of time, Commissioner. Councillor McKinney, I was going to ask you about access to groceries in grocery stores. Do I have the right one here? Yeah, it is. Just before I get into this document, there's 2 major grocery stores in your ward, is that right?
That's correct.
And that's the Independent at Somerset and Bank,
Yes.
and the Farm Boy at Metcalf and Gloucester, I guess, is that right? Or,
Metcalf Nepean, yes.
Yeah. And did they stay open throughout the occupation?
Yes, they did.
Did they close at any time?
The Farm Boy closed on one afternoon. Was overtaken by a significant amount of the occupiers. There was a message that had come out that the Independent had also, but in the end, I learned that, in fact, the occupiers had gone into the basement, into the parking garage underneath, but in fact, the
Independent
store didn't. The Independent did not close down.
They just closed down their
Yes,
parking
exactly.
lot, their underground parking lot. Commissioner, I'm just going to respect the time, and those are all the questions I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next is the Ottawa Police Service.
Good afternoon, councillors. Good afternoon, Commissioner. In the interest of trying to save,
Could you again? I'd
I'm
like
sorry.
people to introduce themselves for the.
my name is David Michikowski, and I appear for the Ottawa Police Service. I apologize for that. In the interest of trying to save a bit of time, I'm going to try not to refer to a document, but if you need the document to assist you, I'm certainly happy to call it up. And so I want to start by talking about the January 26th meeting that the Ottawa Police Chief attended with councillors. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Yes.
And just, Councillor McKinney, I'll address my remarks, some of these remarks to you, and then when I want to address remarks to Councillor Fleury, I'll address them to you, again, in the interest of trying to save some time so that I don't have you both answer the same question. And I understand that at that meeting, you were specifically, and that was a meeting with councillors specifically to let them know about what the situation was coming up. Is that right?
That's correct.
And as I understand, at that time you were told, or the councillors were told, that the situation was fluid.
Correct.
And you were also told, or the councillors were also told, that the police could not predict what would happen.
That is my recollection, yes.
And you were also told that that they had certain numbers with respect to the expected convoy, but those could change within the hour. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you, as a result, Chief Slowly advised that area businesses would therefore have to make decisions for themselves as to whether to stay open or not.
Correct.
And you understood that that was because it was such a fluid situation.
Correct.
And at that meeting, it was also indicated by Chief Slowly that the unpredictable nature, that this was an unpredictable event, correct?
That was what he said, yes.
And thank you very much. And I want to go forward 2 days to January 28th. I understand further information was provided to council at that time. Is that correct?
What day of the week is that? Could you?
That would be on the Friday.
The Friday, okay.
And I'll call it up for you if you need the document, Councillor Kenny. But I understand that, so that was on the Friday, and the convoys had started to arrive on Friday. Is that correct?
The convoy did start to arrive on Friday, yes,
Right. And the largest one, however, came the following day. Is that correct?
that's correct.
And at that meeting, you were advised by the Ottawa Police that, again, the situation was very fluid and would continue to change.
That was their assessment that they relayed to us, yes.
And I understand on Saturday, January 29th, more information was provided to you. And I wonder if we could call up OPS 4225, please. And perhaps we could just scroll down. And I understand if we look at the, we see that again, you were told, I guess, in the, I believe in the 5th line, if I'm not mistaken, that the dynamic of the crowd at that time was cooperative, but there were isolated incidents, but overall the crowd at that time was peaceful. Is that your recollection?
I don't recall seeing this, this email.
You don't recall seeing it?
No, I mean, doesn't mean that it didn't come to me, but
You wouldn't have any reason to disagree with that information, would you?
can
That
I?
was from Mr. Ayat at
Okay.
the city. And it looks like it,
It wasn't sent
I
to us.
don't, it wasn't sent to us. I never saw this.
This was sent to senior management.
Yeah.
but I take it you would have no reason to not trust what Mr. Ayat said?
We weren't informed.
We weren't, yeah, I have no idea. We certainly were never given this information, or this assessment, yeah.
So certainly the information we see was conveyed to lots of people in the city of Ottawa that it was a fluid situation. Correct?
That seems to have been conveyed, yes.
And that continued to be your understanding from the first meeting with the chief, that things were changing, correct?
That is what the chief conveyed to us, yes.
And I wonder if we could please turn up OTT 1930. That is a chain of emails, and I understand that on January 30th, the chief provided a further update to councillors. Is that correct?
I'm
If you
going
want
to
to-
object. Council, can you please provide
Sure,
a little more
if we could
information?
perhaps
That-
scroll
I don't
down.
see the document as saying that whatsoever.
You'll see.
Okay.
Do you
Thank
have
you.
it now? Perfect, thanks. The chief provided a further update to councillors,
Yes,
and I see in the first couple of lines that he indicated that there were large crowds, but they were being managed at that point in time.
that was his assessment, yes.
And he also indicates that there were some high-risk situations that had been managed by the police,
That's what he says here, yes.
and criminal investigations were undertaken.
That's what Chief Soley says, yes.
And he also said, I wonder if you could scroll down a little further. Yeah, that's fine. He also said, you'll see at the paragraph that starts, priorities continue to include. You'll see the next sentence, he indicated.
This is Diane Dean's,
This was not from the chief.
yeah.
That's correct, but Diane Dean says, and this goes
I
to
see, okay.
counselors, correct?
Right.
Right. And so Ms. Dean says in that paragraph that I just took you to. This work is resource intensive and police resources are fully stretched and fully engaged, correct?
That's what it says.
And I take it you had no reason to disbelieve what she was saying to you?
I did not agree with the assessment after the first weekend, no.
And so you didn't agree when she said it takes basically a lot of resources?
Oh, I agreed with that. What I didn't agree with was the assessment by the chief that everything was under control for the weekend.
Let's see. And you'll see that in just above where it says ending of the demonstration and departure, you'll see at this time, due to safety concerns, management of the protest and traffic must take precedence. However, these matters will be responded to as resources become available. You saw that?
Yes.
And so I take it what you understood from that was that the police have to prioritize management of the protests due to safety concerns?
Correct.
And I take it you understood that just as, I don't know if you've had the unfortunate experience of being in a hospital in recent years, but just as in a hospital, patients get triaged in emergency, that was going to happen with the police as well.
That's what is being indicated here, yes.
Right. And you understand from the situation in a hospital that sometimes the most pressing and serious problems have to be solved first.
That would be my expectation, that the most serious problems would be, yes, would be resolved first.
And it's not a question, of course, that somebody else's problems who's in the queue are not important, but it's simply a question that there are limited resources, correct?
Correct.
And you understand, obviously, that police also do not have unlimited resources?
That is correct.
And you understand as well that ultimately it took approximately another 2,000 police officers from across the country to help end the occupation, along with the approximately 1,150 active Ottawa Police Service members, correct?
That is correct.
And so you wouldn't expect, I take it, for Ottawa Police to have 3,150 officers on staff at all times, correct?
That is correct.
It's a question of what the municipality is prepared to pay and what the taxpayers are prepared to pay in terms of funding of the police service, correct?
Yes, you don't staff for surges in need for response. Of course, I understand that, yes.
And on January 31st, you attended another meeting, and that is OPS 5187. And if we can just, that was a meeting with the chief of police and the mayor, correct? And if you want to scroll down, you'll see that it appears, Councillor McKenney, that both you and Councillor Fleury were there. You can see at the fore, there's a reference to something that you said, and you'll see at number 3, there's a reference to something that Councillor Fleury said.
Can you scroll down so we see the extent of what this communication is? This is a note summary. Could you?
Oh, meeting with the...
If you want to go back to the top of the document.
Yes.
I don't know these people.
It was an update from the chief, and then you'll see at the bottom there are some references to your Councillor McKinney and Councillor Fleury, Councillor Luloff. Do you see that?
I see it, yes. I don't recall this meeting.
Okay. And I see there's a reference in this memo to the fact that there will, could be massive risks. Would you accept that that is a realistic assessment of what was going on January 31st, that there would be massive risks in the city of Ottawa and in the police operations at that time?
Massive risks to
Implications
to
short,
residents?
medium, and long term of intervention, especially risk of physical conflict that will ripple across the country.
So is this the risks to residents?
I'm asking you whether you agree that there would be risk implications. Those could be risk implications, of course, to residents, to police officers.
Well, not being a law enforcement expert, I would have to say that if police felt that there were risk implications, my job at the time was to look out for the people that I represent and their needs, certainly their security needs weren't being met. But if police here say that there were risk implications, that is their assessment of the situation.
And if we could scroll.
Mr. Commissioner, the witnesses have said they don't recall this meeting. So unless my friend can contextualize and maybe help them remember what meeting it was, just putting statements to them when they've said they don't remember being there is not really going to be much assistance to the commission.
Well, let me see if I can help this. You have no reason to disagree that these things occurred, do they? You just simply don't recall that meeting, but you don't question the document, do you?
I think the councillors need to understand a bit more about the document, that it's notes from a meeting taken by the OPS, and maybe try to help them recall the meeting.
Commissioner, if the witness, I didn't understand that the witness did not agree, simply Councillor McKinney indicated she didn't specifically recall.
My pronouns are they.
Apologize. They did not specifically recall the meeting.
Okay, well, maybe you can just ask if they can confirm their understanding or what they know about this meeting, and then we can go from there.
Thank you. If we could scroll down, please, to question 4. There's a statement, and it appears to be attributed to you, Councillor, but perhaps you can tell me if that helps refresh.
Can you just go up a bit to see what these questions are? I think it's not clear to me either what this is recording.
It is not entirely clear, but you'll see at question 4, there is something, and I'm going to read it to you, Councillor McKinney, and perhaps you can tell me if that refreshes your memory.
I've read it. It does not.
It does not.
You know, this was
refresh your memory.
3.5 weeks of constant meetings and you know, working 15-hour days. I don't recall every single meeting and thing that was said and brought up, and this is not helping in any way. There's no context for what this meeting is about.
Sure,
I don't disagree that it happened, but
sure. So there's let me try this. So there's a statement in number 4 that says, "I appreciate everyone doing their best." Mm-hmm. Does that sound like something that you said?
Yeah, of course. I don't disagree that what was put down here attributed to me. I probably did say I appreciate that everyone is doing their best on January 31st.
And it also indicates you appreciate that everyone's doing their best. It also, you talked about feedback and frustration increasing, correct?
That most certainly was happening, yes.
And I take it your feeling, and that of the whole city, presumably, was they wanted this to end, correct?
They would have preferred that police never allowed the trucks to come in on non-truck routes and park in their neighborhood and stay. That was the key of the frustration with what was happening. And then when it couldn't end, residents could not understand, you know, from what they were seeing, why police couldn't take more action. And yes, on January 31st, I appreciated that everyone was probably doing their best, but the frustration that came from residents and myself really was that, it should have never happened in the first place. We saw what happened in Quebec City, we saw what happened in Toronto, and, that frustration just increased as we saw how other police services handled the convoys.
And the situation in Toronto that you referenced, that occurred after the Ottawa situation, correct?
That is correct.
And you would agree with me that obviously Toronto learned from Ottawa's experience, correct?
Yes, I can't speak for them, but I would imagine they did.
And you're aware that for Rolling Thunder, a different plan was in place because, again, Ottawa police learned with the benefit of hindsight.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so given where we were on January 31st, you obviously wanted it to end, but you understood there was, at that point, no magic bullet, correct?
Oh, no, I expected every night when I went to bed to get up the next morning and that there would be an end to it. I had to believe that. It was too dangerous for the residents that I represent to ever consider that this could not end with perhaps not a lone police force, but we also have a federal government and a provincial government that were not stepping in. Nobody else was stepping in. I agreed that we needed much more resources, but the fact that it took 3.5 weeks is inexcusable.
And ultimately, it was solved with more resources under the command of Interim Chief Bell, correct?
3.5 weeks later, yes.
And I understand that you're obviously interested in serving your constituents and assisting them with their immediate problems.
Correct.
And you'd agree with me as well that you have a duty to protect your constituents, but also the city from the harm that may come upon.
Correct.
And so if, for example, a resident in your area calls the police or bylaw because there's a truck blocking the street, but the people in the car are armed and threatening to detonate a bomb or to kill a hostage if the police move in, you would expect that the police would try and de-escalate?
Correct.
And you would not want the police to simply solve the complaint about the resident, about the truck blocking it, if that meant serious bodily injury or death would result to others in the neighborhood or to the officer.
Correct.
And you would also agree with me that while you're advocating for your constituents, you recognize that the police may be aware of other information that you aren't, and that they need to take into account when they address protesters.
Correct.
And if we could please call up document 1346, please.
What is that's not a complete identification.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's OTT 000111346.0001. And if we could look at 1138, there's an email, Councillor McKinney, from you. Do you see that?
Yes.
And you indicate in the second you're raising a particular issue about your constituents and their fears and concerns, correct?
With the people, yes, constituents who were living in the middle of the occupation, correct.
And I see in the the third line, you'd agree with me that there's much at that point that you did not know that was happening in the background.
Of police operations, that is correct.
And you obviously would not expect the police to share sensitive operational information or intelligence with you.
Correct.
And you recognize the need for the police not to disclose all details.
Hypothetically, or I guess, yeah. I was never looking for details of the operation. I was always looking for protection for the residents who were living in the middle of what became a violent occupation in our city.
And if we look at 1147, Mr. Ayot's response to you, he indicates that we would not want to take action that would fan the flames and make things more dangerous. That strikes you as sensible and reasonable, I take it?
I was looking for protection for residents, and I was given absolutely no information why residents that live in the downtown were not being protected.
Let me move on, Councillor Fleury, to ask if you'd be good enough to answer this question. If we could please turn up document 2779, OTT. And perhaps you could scroll down a bit.
I believe we saw this document earlier today.
I'm sorry?
I believe we saw this document.
Right, okay. And so the concern you expressed to the mayor in the third paragraph relates again to the question of resources of the Ottawa Police Service.
Correct.
And again, you're seeking more resources.
Correct, as per the chief's requests publicly at that time.
And you recognize, obviously, that in the face of this massive demonstration, Ottawa Police Service officers obviously can't be everywhere.
I have no opinion.
They can't be actively managing a demonstration and doing all of the regular police duties. They have to prioritize things, correct?
I don't agree. I've stated that as a member of council on numerous occasions that City of Ottawa paid police officers need to protect and serve residents of Ottawa, not demonstrators that come to our city.
And let me just, I see my time is coming to an end, so I'll have many more questions, but I'll try to just ask a couple now. So if I could ask you, please, to turn to OPS 8245, please. And if you could scroll down it. You talked about, Councillor McKinney, a fire at, or an arson attempt at a apartment on Lisgar, correct?
That's correct.
And it's in your witness statement, and I believe you also mentioned it earlier this afternoon, correct?
And that's correct.
And you're obviously aware of what goes on in your community, I take it?
As much as I can be, yes.
And you wouldn't have any reason, this contains some details as to the police's investigation of the arson. You wouldn't have any reason to suggest that the police didn't investigate that arson, would you?
No, I believe that they did investigate the arson, the attempted arson.
And you're aware that two individuals were both charged with arson and a number of other offenses?
That's correct.
And in both cases, the media release indicated that they were not associated with the convoy, correct?
Yes, I did not agree with that, but that is what the media release said.
You would agree with me, you've given me many examples of legitimate concerns of residents during the protest. You would agree with me, however, that there are many examples of situations where the police did take actions to address residents' concerns during the convoy and did do outreach, correct?
Yes, we did outreach together, as a matter of fact.
And finally, perhaps I can just finish off. I understand your frustration with the level of enforcement that took place in the red zone during the convoy. But you, if we could please just turn up, just to assist you, OTT 28754. You referenced the injunction that the city ultimately obtained, correct?
I'm sorry, which injunction is this?
You talked about an injunction that the city of Ottawa obtained. Your view was that it was that they should have done it sooner, but you mentioned it. And so that's the decision of the Associate Chief Justice. I'm just going to ask if you'd be good enough to scroll to paragraph 26. Justice McWatt says, nevertheless, over 2,000 tickets for bylaw infractions have been given out since January 28 in relation to the demonstration. Specifically, 1732 parking tickets have been issued in the demonstration zone. That's the red zone, correct?
That's what it says, yes.
From January 28 to February 10, 2022, correct?
Correct.
And so you would agree with me that there was enforcement, there simply wasn't enough enforcement. Is that fair?
Yes, absolutely.
And there was ultimately you agreed with me, I believe, that there was not enough resources available to successfully.
So your previous question, though, referred to bylaw, right? We're talking about the bylaw response here to tickets. So I do agree that there just weren't enough resources. And I do agree that police did not have, at this point, police also did not have enough resources. It's why I called on, actually wrote to the Prime Minister begging for resources to come into the city. So yes, I do agree.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Councillor McKenney. Thank you very much, Councillor Fleury. I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. Next is the convoy organizers. If you have any questions.
I'd like to say good morning, but it's good evening. So I'll start with yourself, Councillor.
By introducing yourself,
Oh,
please.
first, hi, I'm Brendan from Alberta. I'm Brendan Miller. I'm counsel for Freedom Corp, of which is an organization that represents the protesters as well as the truckers that were in your city in 2022. So, Mr. Fleury, I want to start just asking you a few questions, if you don't mind. Do you remember sending an email on February 4th, 2022 to Kim Ayotte, Steve Kalinakokis, Keith Egile, Serge Arpin, Lucio Coulard, and Liberal Member of Parliament for Ottawa, Senator Yazir Naqvi, with a tweet from the former federal attorney general, Mr. Alan Rock, that stated the city should obtain an injunction to restrain the truck horns on the basis of nuisance? Do you remember sending that email?
Yes.
All right. And I understand that Mr. Ayotte, General Manager for Emergency and Protective Services for the City of Ottawa, replied to you. Is that right?
I don't believe so. I believe the answer came from Steve Kay.
From Steve Kay himself?
I believe.
Okay. And from your recollection, what was that answer?
All options are being looked at.
Okay.
Can the witness see the document? Is there a reason we are not putting it to him?
I was just asking if you remembered, and I'm not permitted to because I didn't seek leave prior. So that's under the rules. So in your evidence, you made use of a term you referred to as microaggression. Is that right?
I believe so. multiple times.
Okay. Is microaggression, is your understanding of that it means verbal and environmental slights?
Je suis francophone, donc si vous voulez être spécifique sur les mots, il va falloir que vous...
I'm francophone, so if you want to ask me specific things about words, you're going to have to ask me in French. You're asking me a theory about how to define something. Unfortunately, my knowledge of English terminology is perhaps not sufficiently appropriate, Commissioner.
Je m'appelle Brendan.
My name is Brendan.
I think, it is funny, but it's not. I am doing my very best to answer clear questions in English. You asked me a very specific question on a definition. I'm saying, ask me, clarify in French, and I'm glad to specify if it is yes or no. The specificity of the nuance of a word, I'm uncomfortable in responding to your question.
What of the words that I put to you, and there's a few, so means, verbal, and environmental, and slights is confusing? Is there, which one are you confused about?
J'ai expliqué plusieurs fois.
I've already explained. Try to express this, and I've explained this to the Commissioner, that, to my mind, everything in the periphery of the red zone was what I would describe as being microaggressions. I could describe microaggressions to you. For example, go in front of somebody and pull their mask off. I don't know how we want to describe that as a definition, but that's an example of a microaggression. Walking into a restaurant, being asked to leave, and sitting down without having the right to stay, that's another microaggression. Fighting somebody who's homeless, beating somebody who's homeless, that's another microaggression, another type of aggression. Making so much noise at such high volumes that you have to close down a daycare, that's another kind of aggression. That's how I've described aggressions, Commissioner. I'm not a lawyer. I don't have a background in specifics, but I'm trying to use the terminology that I can to be as specific as possible to describe what I received as information and what I was able to see.
Can you get him a pair of these so he can understand what I'm saying in English as well, please?
Oh, that's mean.
Is that possible? Do you need this? Would you like one of these for when I question you in English, because I'm unfortunately incapable of speaking French?
And I will do my very best to answer in English, but it was a very, I don't need it, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So you had said that beating up a homeless person was an aggression, at least the translation. That's what it was. That's more of an assault. So had you witnessed any homeless people get beaten up by protesters?
No, if you recall my intervention, the Shepherds of Good Hope is located at the corner of King Edward and Murray. There was an incident with a client. The executive director reached out to me to inform me of the incident.
Okay. And were any charges laid?
I have no clue.
Okay. Who was the individual who was beaten? Do you know?
I have no clue.
Okay. Thanks. So it was in February 4, 2022, you get that email. Were you aware that Chief Solly, as well as the OPP, had recommended that the city get an injunction in January 31?
I don't believe I was.
Okay. And both of you, I take it, none of you were on the police commission, correct?
Correct.
All right. And you understand that as general counselors, none of the police commissioner involved with the police. Again, my friend was trying to clarify that with you. The police are independent of the city, and they can't share information that they know or their plans with you. Do you know that?
Absolutely.
Correct.
My interventions relate to information I have from my community and reports that my community residents and businesses did to the Ottawa police, and making sure that it's getting the attention and awareness from authorities.
Okay. Thank you. So those are some of my questions. The other one I had, what is your relationship with Jexi Lee? How long have you known her?
I've never met Zexi Lee, except for when she was recognized as a community builder at City Hall by City Council.
Okay. And did you ever also assist, and I'll move on to yourself, Councillor, but with the distribution of the release agreements and the request of the protesters and truckers to leave under the auspices of signing a release from the injunction and claim that was filed by Ms. Lee?
You're asking me?
Yeah, did you?
I did not.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions for you.
Thank you.
Councillor, so I understand that you do know Ms. Lee, is that right?
Yes, I met Miss Lee about a week after the occupation ended.
Okay, but prior to that, I understand that from some of the information that you were handing out some of those leaflets for them to sign and to leave. If they signed it, they would be released from the class action lawsuit if they left. You were assisting with that.
Yes, that was at the time I had not met Zexi Lee. I had friends who had been working in the community, and I agreed to go out with them to try to encourage some of the people who were parked on Kent Street to move along to avoid being part of that class action.
Okay, thank you. And I think a lot of these have actually, my friend has got through most of them. When did Chief Sully advise you that he needed 1,800 officers? Do you remember when that was?
I can't tell you when it was. I do recall that he said that.
Okay. Would it be fair to say that he asked for that around February 8th, 2022?
It would be fair to say that. I can't say that that's the exact date, yes.
And so just to clarify, so when you made that motion in the special council meeting with respect to having the Ottawa Police Service be taken over by the RCMP, that was on February 7th, 2022. Is that fair?
That's correct.
Right. And why did you choose the RCMP and not the OPP?
At the time, I was desperate to do anything to bring order into the residential areas. I saw the area around Parliament as being the responsibility of the federal government, and that is why I asked for federal assistance, which was the RCMP.
Right. And in some of the records, a colleague of yours, I believe you know him, NDP member, Provincial Parliament, Joel Harden, he was contacting members in the community and members in the council trying to raise money for the claim of Miss Lee. Do you remember that?
I don't recall that, no.
Okay. And one more question, actually, for you, Mr. Fleury. You had said earlier in your evidence that individuals and persons couldn't live in the space where the protesters had set up. Is that right?
Yes.
So how did the protesters live there?
A big rig, as you know, is quite a significant space. And what we saw was very creative ways to live in those spaces or in the cab or so. Yeah, I mean,
so
not sure where you're.
These individuals that are living there in the area, of course, are in their houses and as well as in their apartments, correct?
Who are the individuals in this case?
You said it wasn't livable for the residents, correct?
Correct.
Right. But they're living in their houses, and these truckers and protesters are living in their trucks, right?
You're saying that, yeah.
Okay. You would also define the trucks as weapons.
Yes.
Okay. And how were those weapons used to assault anyone or hurt them, other than the horns and the diesel you've already spoken about? Is that it?
The physical nature of the vehicle, which is quite large, and the combination of those are a form of a fortress, a form of a weapon.
Okay, so it's your view that a truck sitting on the side of a road with somebody sleeping inside of it is a weapon?
No.
Okay, so
Oh my goodness, friends. That is Brendan Miller. He is a lawyer with the Freedom Corp, just committing his second murder of the day. They're going to invoke the Emergencies Act on him if he's not careful. He's just a phenomenal lawyer, and he asks these like plain language, common sense questions of these absolute crazy people who are testifying at the Emergencies Act Commission. They call it the Public Order Emergencies Act Commission. We're calling it the Trucker Commission here at Rebel News because really that's what it is. The Emergencies Act Commission is designed to examine whether or not the government had any sort of justification in invoking an anti-terrorism law on peaceful protesters. I can't even believe I'm saying that, in our nation's capital, to euthanize a street protest of bouncy castles, hot tubs, concerts, shinny hockey, and soup kitchens and street cleanups. But the problem was they were, embarrassing Trudeau internationally, and they remained peaceful all the way through, no matter what sort of force was brought to bear on them and what sort of lies were told about them. They were peaceful the whole way through. They had their bank accounts seized, they had their property seized, they had their trucks towed, and still completely peaceful. And today is the second day of the hearings, and we saw a rotating cast of absolute loons testifying today. And Brendan Miller cut through them like a hot knife through butter. It was really something to watch today. We're going to go through some of the things today and break down what we saw. Those two people there that Brendan Miller was cross-examining, that is, if I recall correctly, that's Matthew Fleury. He's a city councillor with the city of Ottawa. And the other one there is Catherine McKenney. She's a councillor, and she is running to be mayor. God help you people in Ottawa if you elect that woman. Those two testified today that they sent a series of letters to Mayor Jim Watson, who is not known for his restraint, demanding that the Emergencies Act be invoked, or at least they wanted to Emergencies Act these people. They didn't have that language, though. What they wanted was martial law after 6 days of the protest. That's how quick they wanted a crackdown to be done. They wanted a curfew imposed on the city. So while they're sitting there complaining that people couldn't go about their lives because of the weapons of the trucks, the fortress of the trucks, laughable joke, all of Alberta would give these people a heart attack. But they wanted actually the whole city put under a curfew. So the whole reason they wanted the Emergencies Act invoked was because of the inconvenience of a traffic snarl. So their plan to just imprison the entire city. Like pick a lane. You can't complain that the city is imprisoned by trucks and then want a law to imprison everybody in the city in their homes because you don't know how to deal with this. They also, this I didn't know, but I think what a horrible, horrible, evil bunch of people. They lobbied actively, those two maniacs, and they lobbied the city to reduce the temperature in the idling bylaw. So a lot of these more progressive, ridiculous cities, they have a bylaw wherein you can't idle your vehicle until it's under a certain temperature. As though people are just out there wasting gas, just idling their car at plus 22. Anyway, they had the city reduce the temperature like drastically so that the truckers, if they idled their trucks to prevent themselves from freezing to death, they would receive a substantial ticket. Those two had that done, but the police, to their credit, I think it was under former police chief Slowly, who seems to be a level-headed individual, and who I think is no longer the police chief there because he wouldn't do the things those sorts of maniacs wanted him to do. They were upset because the police were not going around and enforcing that idling prohibition. So they were mad that the police were not going around ticketing people for not freezing to death. Bunch of humanitarians these people are. Earlier in the day, we saw some people from the business community offering testimony. Her name was Natalie Carrier. although I'm sure she says it with a very French accent because she did that whole Alec Baldwin's wife thing where she forgets to use the English word, even though she's been talking in English all day. So we heard from her, and Kevin McHale. He's also a sort of a president of a business association. Those two, there's a lot of white saviorism coming from those two. Natalie Carrier testified repeatedly that she was concerned about racialized people in the business community and the LGBT community and business owners and LGBT employees, because in a stark admission of her own bigotry, she felt that these people could potentially be harassed or discriminated against because of their race or their sexual preference. But was assuming bigotry on behalf of other people based on their political stance, which actually makes her the bigot. But anyway, she said she was really concerned about the people who worked at the Starbucks, because she said there's a lot of gay people who work at the Starbucks. I hope she didn't out them, but it was just fascinating, because then she also testified that, or didn't give evidence, or I guess you don't need evidence in these things. You can just give anecdotes, which is what I listened to a lot of today. She said she never gave any instances of anybody ever being harassed or discriminated against because of their race or sexual identity, which was quite something. I guess you can just make things up out of whole cloth. It's just a very interesting day. The day started off, the first two people who testified were people who were behind the lawsuit against the truckers. And one lady said that she was forced to go to sleep. I laugh because I'm from Alberta and I'm the only person in my yard who doesn't drive a diesel vehicle, but even my 16-year-old daughter does. And she said that she had to sleep in her bed wearing a mask because of the fumes of diesel out on the street. I mean, that's just crazy. It's -20. Close a window. Why do you have your window open if you're worried about diesel? But you think your paper mask is going to stop diesel fumes? Give me a break. And then the other lady, I forget how to say her name, but Zexi Lee, she was the key lady behind the no honking injunction. She testified today that actually she wasn't deterred from going out on the street. And she listed some of the horrors she experienced at the hands of these truckers. And one of them was people telling her to smile underneath her mask. So I don't know. My takeaway from the day is that I hope our enemies and the world's bad guys are not watching this commission hearing, because Ottawa is occupied by the most soft-handed, soft-bellied people on the planet, people who will die if you misgender them. We should throw to some clips, though. You've probably heard enough from me. What's our first clip of the day here, Olivia? Very first one, very important. By the way, if you'd like to send us a paid chat to help keep the lights on, because we are not funded by Justin Trudeau to report these ridiculous anecdotes verbatim as though it were like the worst terror attack to ever happen on Canadian soil. We're approaching this skeptically, like normal people would. If you'd like to pitch in to help us, you can do that at truckercommission.com. We have a rotating cast of journalists who are going to be staying at an Airbnb in Ottawa, so that just like the convoy itself, we will be covering this from beginning to end, because you absolutely just cannot trust the mainstream media. Their flawed reporting actually has been instrumental, at least according to the government's own submissions, that they relied on the flawed reporting of the mainstream media, that this was some sort of foreign funded operation, which meant that they could invoke the Emergencies Act to euthanize the truckers' protest, because that would be sort of jeopardizing Canadian sovereignty, having all this like foreign actors, or at least foreign funding flowing into Canadian actors in Canada. Now, the whole point of this commission is to examine the actions of the government, not the actions of the truckers, although you wouldn't know that if you watched the testimony today. And, you know, the buck stops at the top. So if the Emergencies Act invocation was not justified, should heads roll? Yeah, you'd think so. I mean, it's the single largest civil liberties violation in Canadian history. You think somebody might be held accountable if they got it wrong. But oh, no, not Justin Trudeau. Let's roll to that clip.
This is over 30 days. You know, when it's all wrapped up, and the commissioner, if he finds that there was no justification for the federal government to invoke the Emergencies Act, should there be consequences for the federal government, including your resignation?
But we knew from the very beginning that invoking the Emergencies Act is a big step. It had never been done before, but given these unprecedented illegal protests, we needed to take action. We took it in a way that was measured, that was responsible, that was time limited, and we knew full well that there needed to be a public inquiry. Canadians need that level of transparency and accountability, and that's why we launched this inquiry. That's why I'm so happy to be, why I offered from the beginning to be part of appearing at this commission, and we're going to make sure that Canadians see the situation we were facing and how the tools we used were appropriate.
Sure, but if it's found that there was no justification for it, again, what should the consequences be for that?
I think the important thing is for Canadians to understand the situation we were in and the choices we make. We didn't enter into using the Emergencies Act lightly. We used it with a sense of it was the necessary tool at the time. We used it in a way that was measured and proportionate, and we're really pleased that the Commission is going to be able to hear from all these witnesses, and that was why I offered to appear.
He didn't offer to appear, he was subpoenaed, and he didn't offer to have the inquiry. It's built into the invocation of the act. It's an accountability measure built into the act that if you invoke this thing, you're going to have to answer and produce reasons for it. And it's very specific in the act that there are things that limit the behavior of the government. It has to be to invoke the act, the situation before you has to fit into a very specific box. And that box is like this big, and the convoy is all out here. It does not fit into that box, no matter how you try to shoehorn it into there. But if you listen to Justin Trudeau, I think this is going to be just another learning lesson for all of us, right? Just like blackface, just like all those trips he took with the AgaCon, it's going to be, you know, something we can all just learn from. He makes the mistake and then we just learn from it and pay the consequences. And I think it's very interesting that he said that it was measured, and the response of the federal government was measured, and it was sort of in line with what was happening in Ottawa. Bouncy castles. He invoked a terrorism law on bouncy castles. But for him, that's in line because the real emergency was his reputation being harmed internationally. And that's what these truckers were doing. They were embarrassing him on the international stage. And if we know anything about Justin Trudeau, he likes to be the leader of the progressive cabal globally, although he's falling out of favor these days. Even his progressive friends think he's as ridiculous as I do, I think. Now, I alluded to this next video. This is an Ottawa resident. Let me just bring up her name here. Her name is Victoria de la Ronde. And she is, I think, purposefully, I think she's selected because she is a sympathetic character based on her health conditions. But, and I hate to use the language of the left, I think that's quite ableist, actually, to assume that people with health conditions like blindness or, being frail, that they can't lie or make things up, or be a hypochondriac, or be ridiculous, or be an exaggerator and a malingerer, which is exactly what I think this woman is. Let's roll that clip about how this lady said she went to bed at night while the trucks were in town.
But the idling continued under my window, just with these huge vehicles, the sound of the idling echoing down in the canyon of our buildings. All night. So there was no respite from an assault on hearing. I tried to wear earplugs, but they kept falling out. And then I worried if I wore an earplug, I wouldn't be able to hear the smoke alarm. I wouldn't be able to hear if somebody was pounding on my door to evacuate because there was something, a fire or an explosion outside our door. So I was caught in between. And of course, I slept with a mask on because trying to abate the smell of the diesel and the other smells that were coming up in through the vents. But
that woman is ridiculous. She slept, okay, first of all, she slept with the earplugs in and then the earplugs kept falling out. Those little foam earplugs that you twist when you go to the gun range, or if you're like on the tractor, you twist them, you put them in, and then they unfurl in your ears. Those were falling out, really. But then she said she couldn't wear them because then she was worried that she wouldn't hear the smoke alarm, that her building would be set on fire. These people live in constant fear and anxiety, but that's not everybody else's problem. That's not a reason to violate the civil liberties of peaceful protesters. I think whoever brought them to testify this should be deeply embarrassed of bringing that woman out, trotting that anxious, frail woman out to make her the face of the anti-convoy sufferers. She said diesel was seeping in through her vents. Is she crazy? She has to be crazy. You know, like, when a delivery man pulls up to drop stuff off at her Tim Hortons, does she just like have a conniption in the parking lot? I've never seen a bunch of people so scared of trucks, and everything they own got to them on a truck, but they just live in fear of these big vehicles. Like I said, if they ever set foot in Alberta with our trucks and our tractors and our heavy haul equipment and our, just the way we live, they would die of anxiety attacks, obviously. Be walking around with masks thinking they block diesel. Just it's so ridiculous. I can't even believe it. Let's move on to the next one, because I also alluded to this when I was just doing my quick debrief of all the madness, just the madness today at the commission hearings. This Ottawa resident, this is the Zexi Lee, who you'll see in a further clip with our friend Young William Diaz. Anyways, let's throw to this clip, because she was testifying to just the horrors, people, that the good folks of Ottawa had to live through when the truckers were there, just having fun. It's just a boring city, by the way. The truckers seemed fun. I think maybe that's what these people are most upset about, is that they just came and lived free and had fun, and they just couldn't believe it. But anyway, she testified that people were talking to her about her mask. And so terrorism, I guess, seize those bank accounts. Let's roll that clip.
Further to that, it was unpleasant, to say the least, to exit my home, but it was something I did anyways, as I didn't feel like the whole situation was wrong, and I felt almost a little bit of defiance, wanting to go outside and continue to live my life as best I could. And when I did, oftentimes I was harassed for wearing a mask, or I was told to smile more under my mask, or, just these kinds of comments that wouldn't have otherwise occurred and on a quiet, normal walk day by day. And I think what was one of the worst things was whenever I chose not to engage with the individuals that were occupying my neighborhood, they would blast their horns at me with a smile on their faces, and then they would cheer in unison.
That's the worst thing that happened to her. Somebody honked at her. But yeah, she's detailing the horror. So first they want you to believe that they're trapped in their house and too scared to go outside because of the intimidation of the fortress of trucks. I love that. But then she obviously goes outside. She's not intimidated. They're talking to her. They're not hurting her. They're not harming her. They're not making sexual innuendo at her. They're just telling her to smile more and telling her that maybe she doesn't need to wear a mask outside. She was outside. That's the worst thing that she literally said, one of the worst things that happened to me was that somebody honked and scared her and then they laughed. I wish that was like the worst, most traumatizing thing that happened to me over the last 2 years. But anyway, must be nice. Now you see that she's testifying indoors next to, I guess, that sickly lady beside her. She's not wearing a mask because she wants everybody to see her face. She's like a celebutante, right? Like she's the one that brought forward the honking injunction. She's a community activist. She's this progressive powerhouse, they'll have you believe, in Ottawa, except insofar as maybe someone's going to ask her some questions. But she didn't give up on loving to wear a mask outside. So pandemic's all but over. Even I think the left admits this. But I'm not sure why she wore that mask outside. You'll see this in a second. Is it to show that she's still taking everything seriously? Was there a pickup truck nearby with diesel? And so she had to wear a mask? Or was she trying to sneak out so that our William Diaz didn't see her? But either way, there will be no sneaking around Ottawa while William Diaz is on the case. Let's throw to that clip.
Miss, you specifically stated that crimes were happening due to the convoy, yet the crime rate in Ottawa dropped by 90%. Why'd you keep lying about that? Why'd you keep lying about this? Hey, whoa, don't touch me.
Well, you don't put your...
Don't touch me.
I was intimidating. You're intimidating.
For Christ's sake. Miss, why do you think excessive honking means that the government should strip citizens away from their rights?
We're in public. We're allowed asking questions.
I didn't say you're not allowed. She has no
Going to
comment.
continue ignoring your questions. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, ma'am.
Isn't that something? She could go sit in that commission, give the most ridiculous anecdotes, say horrible things about people she never met, accuse them of, being terrorists, basically. That's what this is all about. But the second somebody asks her, why did you say those things? Why did you accuse people of criminality when even the police reported crime statistics say that crime actually went down while the truckers were in the city? Why'd you say those things? And she doesn't want to answer. And if a mainstream journalist got shoved the way our sweet William did, boy, oh boy, they'd be having a full-blown Rachel Gilmore style conniption on Twitter. But it happened to our guy. And so it's perfectly fine. Saying William is being intimidated by asking questions where he starts off with addressing her as Miss. He didn't call names. William's not aggressive. I think he's aggressively polite, which is exactly how I like him to be. But yeah, she, outside of that commission where the questions are friendly, she doesn't have a damn thing to say. And I think that says a lot about these people. We should move on to our next clip, because this is really something. I have never heard an adult man use the word microaggression as frequently as I did today without even a bit of irony. Like I would hear I've heard people say it to make fun of people who use the word microaggression. Like these, I think it used to be called passive aggressiveness, but now it's microaggression because, you control the language, you control everything, including the meaning of the language. So this is Ottawa City Councillor, the guy who wanted the curfew and wanted people to freeze to death in their trucks or face a ticket. The guy who wanted martial law in the nation's capital. He wanted the feds to take control of the nation's capital after just 6 days complaining about microaggressions. And he said it multiple times. Again, these people should be deeply, deeply ashamed of how fragile and unresilient they really are. They're still suffering from honking dementia. Anyways, let's roll this.
Look at the video that the constituent sent to you. It's at OTT 3014416. Councillor Fleury, did you receive similar emails regarding impacts from your constituents?
Very similar daily. Everything that Councillor McKenney is describing is what we were both hearing from any resident that was within the red zone or on the periphery of the red zone, plus a number of microaggressions that are described. People were scared to leave, even if they weren't in the red zone. And when they left, there was a number of incidents near the red zone, which created additional anxiety. The noise, the smells, the fumes, nonstop.
I have two teenage daughters, 13 and 16, and I think they are more resilient than this man, but stronger than this man and able to tackle the day better than this man. He should be deeply embarrassed. Bring back toxic masculinity, because that toxic femininity infecting progressive men is just, it's gross. It's gross. If people are scared to leave their house, their agoraphobia does not justify the civil liberties infractions on peaceful protesters. I'm sorry. And if you don't like repeated protests against the federal government, might I suggest you don't live in the nation's capital where the seat of the federal government is. Go to Prince Albert, although that might be a little bit too conservative for these people, but just go to some Laurentian backwater if you don't want people showing up to protest Justin Trudeau. That's where he works. They're allowed to be there. If you don't like people exercising their civil liberties in the place that houses our democracy, sorry, you're in the wrong town. You just are. Continuing on with Matthew Fleury, who for some reason, by the way, just as we were coming on air there, oh, I lost my earbud. Just as we were coming on air, Matthew Fleury, for some reason decided he was going to respond to a question asked in English by Brendan Miller, that's the truckers lawyer. He was going to respond in French for some reason. He has responded in English all day. He has been questioned in English all day. But once the trucker lawyer started asking questions, then all of a sudden we've got to pull the bilingual card for some reason and respond in a language that Brendan Miller doesn't speak. And I just thought, what a microaggression, right? Wouldn't you call that a microaggression? I guess it is, right? Very least passive aggressive. And I don't like when men are passive aggressive. It's so unbecoming. But speaking of unbecoming men, let's continue on with Matthew Fleury, because this guy, all of Alberta would just send him into a tizzy because he said the trucks were weaponized. Let's go to that one.
Councillor Fleury, you had used the term weapons when describing the trucks, and here in this video we see some unsafe behavior. It appears to show a truck driving in the wrong lane against traffic on the sidewalk. Did you observe any kind of unsafe use of the trucks, or can you expand on this notion of weaponizing that you mentioned earlier?
Sure. I was describing earlier the Byron Market, where on weekends there would be the surge of folks, and obviously we're used to protests in Ottawa. We're used to events. We're used to Canada, where 100,000 people come to the downtown core and celebrate our country. There's enough parking. There's parking underground. There's parking in the Byron Market, paid parking. The rules of parking were not followed. People would park in any direction, would park on sidewalks in a very pedestrian area. If you know the Byron Market, it's small businesses, storefronts. It's really clear where you're supposed to park and where is the pedestrian realm. So the surge of vehicles, pickups is one of the aspects, and we saw that in different areas of my community. The Bikers Church in Vanier was one area. De La Salle High School was another one. Along Rideau Street and the Byron Market were other areas. Nicholas were others. So there's those incidents of people not following the rules of the road in pickup trucks, which is a different vehicle, which is a weapon in itself. But the weaponized description to me is really the rigs who take space on the street and make noise through the horns that you've shown in video, the fumes. And I know reading through the evidence, preparing for this, we weren't informed of Ottawa Public Health and the risk to the health, but we were getting a lot of complaints from business operators and residents in the area of the smells, the intoxication of those smells. So the compounding effect of noise, smells, the physical presence, the inability for folks to, in some areas, walk on the sidewalk, walk safely at a crosswalk. We have, like any community, folks with mobility needs, and getting on and off a curb anywhere and everywhere doesn't work safely. So that's the description of the weapon, is that truck took space on the road. The truck itself created an environment that was unsafe for the immediate neighbors and made it impossible for what is our responsibility in terms of safety and well-being of residents and businesses in our community to safely live and be in the zone.
That wispy eggshell man. He thinks that trucks, just by nature of being on the road, are weaponized because he saw people not following exactly all the rules of the road. How does he survive rush hour traffic? You know, what if a big rig pulls up beside him? What if he gets a whiff of exhaust fumes? What happens to him then? Does he need to go on medicine? You know, I'm not one to say that we should put medication in the water, but I'm willing to hear arguments about what we should do with the water system in Ottawa. We should just maybe take all the strong, sturdy, mentally resilient people out of that city, and maybe we do need to consider medicating the water supply. Although I don't want to think that what I've seen today is indicative of Ottawa as a whole. I'm willing to have my mind changed, but I am very, very disappointed. Ottawa, you did not send your best. You just didn't. We've got a few more clips here. I just want to bring up my screen here. I'm flying alone today because our team in Ottawa is still working. The hearings are still ongoing. I'm sure the trucker lawyers are being microaggressed against by Matthew Fleury. And Ezra is also very busy, so that's why I'm flying alone today. So thank you for humoring me as I talk to myself for about an hour. Now, that original Ottawa resident that you heard from, Zexi Lee, while she doesn't seem like a very nice lady, her name is sure fun to say, isn't it? Zexi Lee. She was talking about, like the whole time she was talking about how she didn't say she felt unsafe. She wouldn't say that, but she said, I don't feel safe. So she said, when I'm out on the streets, I don't feel unsafe, but I don't feel safe. So like normally that's how I feel in the city. I'm aware. I don't feel like I could be just like totally unaware of my circumstances. I have heightened situational awareness when I'm in the city, but do I feel unsafe? Not necessarily. I just feel more aware. I think that's sort of how she testified to feeling. But she did testify to an incident of violence, maybe battery, maybe assault, depending on how you feel. But it was perpetrated against the truckers. And I'll just let you watch it. It's really something to see because it speaks to the level of madness of these people, that if violence is perpetrated against the truckers, it's justified because you don't like having them there. Anyway, let's throw to that. I've got things to say.
Can you describe what you mean by the egg throwing?
Well, you know, there were very large trucks parked everywhere, and in some of these instances, they were parked right next to some high-rise condo buildings. And as a result, some people may have gotten some cartons of eggs and, you know, had their little retaliation in frustration, because really, what else could they do? And when that incident occurred, I remember the police actually came to my building to inquire about the egg throwing, as a complaint had been made by the truckers. And I remember that I felt it as an affront, and that a lot of my neighbors felt it as an affront as well when they were investigating something like this in the light of everything that was happening to us and what they were really ignoring in a lot of their statements and releases to the public. And as a result, I decided to organize a meeting with a number of residents in my building with some Ottawa Police community liaison officers, just so we could have a recorded account of what our experiences were and really to, again, diffuse the tension and really concretely say, you know what's happening here. We are telling you this is our experience, and we really desperately need help because things have gone on too long, and the residents, honestly, they had wanted to fight back because they felt that nobody else was doing anything for them.
Did you take note of some of the things she said there? She really tried to downplay what was actually an act of violence against the convoy. She didn't like having them there. Now, she never testified to any incidents of violence. She didn't really testify to any incidents of systemic harassment. She said people told her to smile. Good grief. I bet you she does walk down the street pretty dour when she sees a blue collar man there. Like she's above them. And so they get eggs. They throw the eggs. Now, I'm not sure if they threw them at the vehicles, which is vandalism, an actual crime, and mischief, probably more mischief than Tamara Leach ever got up to. And it sounds like she might have been counseling to commit mischief there. You know, if she was sitting in on that and somebody said, oh, we should throw eggs, and she says, oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's our way to fight back. Sounds a lot like counseling to commit mischief she just testified to there. And then she says, really, what else can you do? I don't know. Not throw eggs, mind your own business, sit in your house and cry. I don't care. But I'll tell you, lady, if one of these leftists hits me with an egg, I promise you I will tie you in a knot. That's, if you hit somebody with an egg, that's vandalism. You can't just throw things at people. That's assault. You just can't pick up an egg and hit somebody in the face or the head or the eye with it. But she feels so justified in the crimes against the truckers because they don't get rights, because they have the wrong kind of politics, that she will stand up and testify to it in a commission hearing in front of the whole world and downplay it all. Downplay the fact that the only violence I heard anybody testify to today in a long soul-sucking commission was coming from the Ottawa residents against the truckers. But it is the truckers who are on trial here today. I think it's absolutely outrageous. And again, my warning still remains. You throw an egg at me, you're going to find out just how hard I work on my fitness levels. Anyway, we should keep going because that same girl, same fragile, just gossamer human being there, who just testified to committing an act of violence, or at least approving or downplaying an act of violence. I don't know exactly her role in all of that, but she didn't seem to think it was a bad idea and didn't want to talk anybody out of it. They're the ones, okay, so they're the ones throwing eggs. They're the ones plotting against the truckers, like getting together in a little group and plotting against the truckers to do things with them or to them. But she then says that this was like some kind of lawless movie, except her people were the ones being lawless. Let's throw to that clip.
I just remember feeling like it was such a surreal sight. It almost felt like you were in something like The Purge, because though I didn't often see direct acts of violence, there was a certain chaos on the streets, and that feeling of chaos and rule breaking and law breaking gradually increased as things progressed. Yeah, I need a moment. I just remember.
She needs a moment. To what? Formulate the next lie? Did you notice there she never said there was actual chaos? an actual lawlessness. She said there's a feeling of chaos. Again, I don't care about your feelings. I couldn't care less about your feelings. She said there were feelings of chaos. And that's why it felt like the purge. She's really the star of her own movie here, isn't she? She's a revolutionary against the truckers because her stupid little friends threw eggs at them. She should be interviewed by the police for the names of those people. Investigate that crime, by the way. Investigate that mischief. Maybe they can spend 49 days in jail because of it, like Tamara Leach. Maybe they should have their bank accounts seized, like so many Canadians had theirs. Maybe they should have their trucks towed. No, they don't have trucks. Maybe they could have their Birkenstocks towed. They can have the Birkenstocks towed away. Maybe they can have their insurance canceled. Maybe they can have their bank loans denied, like so many farmers did when Farm Credit Canada decided that if you supported the convoy, you wouldn't qualify for a loan. If you were a conservative farmer, imagine that. You didn't qualify for a loan from the Federal Farmers Bank. Maybe those people should face the consequences of their mischief to the same extent that the truckers are facing ramifications because of their alleged mischief. You know what? I don't make the rules, but maybe we should apply them equally. Team in Toronto, I don't know if we have any chats, and I'm definitely not running out of things to talk about. Perfect. You just sent them to me. That's great. I'll address those before we wrap up the stream. And thank you to everybody who does donate to keep the lights on here at Rebel News and who donates at truckercommission.com. Unlike the mainstream media who are just there treating this Zexy Lee like she's a serious individual. They're treating her like she is the victim of a crime instead of someone who, at least according to her own testimony, stood idly by while others committed crimes that she did not object to. We're going to hold these people to account, and we're going to put in context just how absolutely ridiculous they are. Like, just deeply, deeply unjust people. And the only way we can do that is by being on the ground there in Ottawa in our Airbnb makeshift studio. And the guys, I guess it's approaching 7:00 in Ottawa, and they're still working. I'm still getting messages on my phone from William, who has been given her since early this morning. Before those witnesses have to leave that building where the commission is taking place, they're going to have to run the William gauntlet, and they're not going to get past him. Young man is really showing everybody how journalism should be done. You hold powerful people to account. You don't run cover for them like the mainstream media. All that is to say, if you'd like to donate to help us do all that, you can do that at truckercommission.com, and you can see all of our coverage and all of William's great work there. Let's go to our chats, and we'll wrap it up at 7 p.m. Eastern, if you wouldn't mind. We've got Adam Ott. I think this is our friend Adam Ottawa. He sends us $5 and says, please take me out of Ottawa. The West is calling. That is one of the final great things that Premier Jason Kenney did, is he put up these ads in the TTC in Toronto. But he really should be putting them up in Ottawa too. I feel like there are some good people out there who could really find their footing here in Alberta. But he has these ads that say Alberta is calling. And we talk about our opportunity, our lower cost of living, and our freedom. And, our big cities have all the same problems that progressive big cities have. The thing is that we do not let our politicians decide who we are and the kind of people that we are. And I know my friend K2, Kian Simone, will testify to that even when the lockdowns came to Alberta, they didn't come to the people of Alberta because he couldn't tell us what to do and how to treat our neighbors. So that's the beauty of the West and the mindset of the West. So Adam Ottawa, the West is calling, and I think we'd love to have you. Shauna Marie, G83, $5 says, JT, Justin Trudeau, is the most gag reflex inducing, gaslighting, vile, pompous ass. If vomit had a face, it would be his. These pathetic snowflake losers are a complete embarrassment to the human race. Like I said off the top of the show, I hope our enemies in the world's bad guys, although I don't think we have very many enemies with Justin Trudeau at the helm because he seems to have a lot of sympathy for the devil around the world. But I hope they're not watching because they know that they can take over Canada without ever firing their shot. They just have to go into Ottawa and honk, maybe roll a little coal, and these people would be in the fetal position on the ground. We'd have to have stretchers of people just heading off to the nut house so these people could get the medication that they need so that they can get through the day. I've never seen such a dainty bunch of people in my entire life, and I feel like it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse as the weeks roll on. I'm waiting for someone from Ottawa to just impress me. Adam, Ottawa, impress me. Because what you guys are putting forward, it ain't great. Anyway, continuing on, Shauna Marie G83 $5 with the name Zexy Lee. I'd say she's probably pretty comfortable on the streets. Now, I don't want to say that. That's just her name. It's just her name. Everybody's got a fun name. I have a fun name. I have 3 names like a serial killer, I guess. But the lady's name is the least irritating thing about her. Like the fact that she can go there, testify to people she knows committing violence against the truckers, joke about it, say, well, what else could we do? I don't know. Not commit violence is a good place to start. The criminal code lays that out pretty bare. To downplay what she did and then testify to her feelings. And then when someone's going to ask her a prickly question, she runs and has a handler interfere so that she can get out the door without actually ever having to answer for what she's done and what she said. That's the real problem I have with her. Hopefully her 5 minutes of fame are over and she'll just go back to being, I don't know what she does. I'm willing to bet it's career student. Willing to bet. NDP activist, career student. I don't know. I'm open to being shocked, but I think she's probably a career student. Well, everybody, I think that's the show, unless we've got anything more behind the scenes there, Olivia. Okay, so Olivia informs me that William is still ripping it up out there. He was able to get the city councillor who's running for mayor, Catherine McKenney, who we didn't have a clip of it, but maybe we'll have a clip of it tomorrow. Maybe it'll be up on our social media, so watch for that. She corrected the trucker lawyer, I think it was, Brendan Miller, for using the word she when she says her pronouns are they. So maybe we'll find that clip. That's very interesting. She also, before we came on air, I was watching. I've been diligently watching all day. They were talking about this alleged arson that was initially attributed to the truckers in an apartment building. But as it turns out, it was not. After the police did the investigation, they said no. I mean, even the mayor said it was attributed to the truckers. It was a lie that went around the world, this libel. And as it turns out, when the police investigated, they said, no, this is just some dude. He's not a trucker. He's not a trucker. He's not with the. That's something you can't dispute. The guy they got is not a trucker. He's not with the convoy. McKenney refuses, even after charges were laid, to walk it back. She still thinks that they got the wrong guy. She's like the dearly departed Angela Lansbury on like Murder, She Wrote. She solved this crime. The police got it wrong because she feels it. She's done zero investigation. She just feels that the truckers had to have been the bad guy here, and she refuses to walk it back. Anyway, all that is to say, William was able to scrum her. We're going to show a clip of that on our way out the door. And there's a full video to follow. Oh, okay. We'll just tease it. Okay. So we're going to air. Perfect. I misunderstand. Sorry. But I think I set it up well. So that clip will be out later on. We're going to have a full video to follow. And you can follow us on rebelnews.com and truckercommission.com and .ca. I will be live tweeting back again on Monday when the commission reconvenes. And again, if you want to support our independent journalism, it's at truckercommission.com or .ca. And I think that's it. Olivia, do we have a clip to go out on at least? Okay, perfect. We have some clip to go out on. Thanks for bearing with me, guys, as I flew this plane alone.
Walking home through the residential streets was always when I felt the most threatened. It's often when I was threatened. Homophobic slurs, transphobic slurs, just, people recognizing me, from media or other means. So it was more, on the streets going home, it was more those isolated incidents that were the greatest threat throughout and that's what I heard from residents as well. It was uncomfortable. They had to stay safe walking through the convoy, especially if they wore a mask, racialized. But it was outside of that where it was more so the people who were sympathetic to the convoy who were coming into the city and causing that type of